Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second IGB webinar of the year, presented in partnership with nChain. I'm Robin Harrison, B2B editor here at Clarion Gaming. So today we're delighted to bring you a session that looks into one of the most intriguing emerging technologies in the sector, blockchain, in a session with the title Practical Implementation for Blockchain, Safer Gambling and AML. As the title suggests, we're going to delve into blockchain's use for the industry to outline its applications in the field of player protection and compliance. Now, before I hand over to a really stellar panel of early adopters and experts, just a few housekeeping notes. So first of all, today's session is being recorded, so it will be able to listen on demand shortly after the broadcast and to share with your colleagues and contacts. And you can also submit your questions to the panel using the tab conveniently titled Questions in the GoToWebinar interface on the right-hand side of your screen. And so without further ado, I'll hand over to our moderator today, Becky Leggero, who's going to lead to today's session. Becky, over to you.
Great, Robin. Thank you so much, IGB. Thank you so much, nChain. Thank you guys so much for attending this panel. This is one of my favorite topics in the whole world. There's so much to discuss here, and we have the best panelists who I actually had the pleasure of spending some FaceTime with last week in London. So I know you're in for a treat. And so to get the panel started, I wanted to have all of my fabulous panelists just introduce themselves to you. And guys, also, if you can talk just a little quick bit about your company and what it has to do with blockchain technology, that would be fabulous. So I'm going to start with Warren.
Thanks, Becky. Yes, my name is Warren Russell. I'm the CEO and founder of W2. We're a global provider of KYC, AML, KYB, and safer gambling solutions. I've also got another hat as the co-chair of the Age Verification Providers Association, which is the trade body for age verification providers. And we're sort of coming into the blockchain space relatively new. And we've decided to work with Nick and I and the team at nChain. So we're delighted to have been invited onto this webinar today.
Excellent. Yes, and actually, Nick, please go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm Nick Hill. I've been involved in the online gambling space for about the past 20 years, but the last couple of years I've been getting more and more involved with blockchain as a utility application rather than sort of a cryptocurrency and processing side of things. And I'm now currently providing services. I'm the sales director for nChain, and nChain is, for want of a better word, a blockchain development company. And we develop solutions using blockchain technology, and we've developed a product that I will touch on a little bit later that can bridge the gap between legacy technology and the complexities of blockchain. So, and we'll find out more about that later. But yeah, thank you, Becky.
Outstanding. Moving down the line, Paul, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Paul Foster. I'm the CEO over at Crucial Compliance, which is a specialist compliance consultancy and software business. We specialize in sorting out player protection issues across the industry by building a bespoke implementation of our platform. And we're working with nChain to basically put the data that we're all tracking in relation to player protection into the irrefutable ledger so that we always have a trace on what we've done.
Excellent. And I.
Thank you, Becky. My name is Ai Ishii, Business Development at nChain. My name is very confusing, so I'll just explain a little bit. You spell it as AI, like artificial intelligence, and you pronounce it as I, like me, myself, and I. I'm very excited to be here. I have been in the iGaming industry for the last 3 years as a supplier for content aggregation. And I have recently joined nChain to promote utility application of blockchain.
Wonderful. And I am Becky Leggero. I have been in the online gambling space since 2005. And for the past year, I've been full-time with CoinGeek.com, which is a BSV blockchain technology news and information website. And my focus is the intersection of blockchain and iGaming, which is why I'm here today. And so just to let you know how the flow of this panel is going to work, we're going to start off with a presentation that I is going to deliver for us, which you can see below. And that will be followed by a little bit of Q&A between myself and the panelists to dive into some of the topics that I covers. And as Robin said earlier, please do submit your questions. We'll take several breaks if there are questions that come through, so we can get those answered for you. But I just would like to welcome you to go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you. So let's see. Okay, so we are now talking about the practical implementations for blockchain for especially safer gambling and AML. To kick off this presentation, let's address the elephant in the room. Why the heck do we need blockchain to begin with? We get this question all the time. And since I started promoting blockchain as a utility application, I have realized that blockchain is the most controversial technology that I ever worked with. Even artificial intelligence does not rile up people as much as blockchain does. And blockchain is often misunderstood by this loud image of this pump and dump cryptocurrencies and meme coins like Dogecoin or Shiba coin. You might have heard of it. And you might also recall from 2017, all these ICOs that people were hyped into investing, and they unfortunately did not deliver. Because of the lack of technical technical limitation, it was very hard to adopt this technology. But in 2022, blockchain technology is now not the same as compared to the one 5 years ago. The first blockchain adopted as a utility application was Ethereum. It's now known as the most secure blockchain, but the problem has been the scalability. It's very slow and very expensive. On top of that, the transaction fee fluctuates. On a good day, it can cost you 50 cents per transaction, and on a bad day, it can cost you up to 50 euros for that single transaction. This certainly did not help businesses to forecast the cost of using this technology. Thankfully, in the last couple of years, some blockchain companies managed to solve this scalability issue that has been the bottleneck for adoption. Blockchain can now process transactions instantly with a very small fee, down to a cent, just like Visa or MasterCard. You can see in the adoption curve here, I don't know if you will see my, yeah, yes, you can see my mouse. So 2017 was about here, and we are here. We are still at the beginning of the adoption curve, but the technology has finally matured enough, and it's now ready for everyday use. So now that we have established that the blockchain is in a new era of adoption, let's talk about the benefits of this technology. So there are two of the benefits of blockchain that are very important for iGaming sector, which is anonymizing data using hash technology and immutable ledger that brings trust. So how does it work? If you look at the simplified image of blockchain here, you can see that the block 2 and 3 are using a reference to the previous block. This reference is called hash, which is, you can think of hash as anonymized version of the data you want to store on the block. This hash is then used to cryptographically chain the blocks together, hence the name blockchain. If you were to change a piece of information that's already logged on chain, then the hash will not be the same, and all the other references will not match. Therefore, it's impossible to change the data once it's logged on chain, making it immutable. Hope I did not bore anyone with the blockchain 101. So now we can see how the technology works. Let's look at some of the problems we're trying to solve with it. According to the review commissioned by the UK government, the economic burden on the taxpayers in the UK is between 1.2 to 2 billion pounds a year. It is also estimated that over 1 million people are at-risk players, problem gamblers, and close to 4 million people have been negatively affected by someone close to them, family members or friends. Overall, about 5 million people have experienced harm linked to gambling in the UK. To put this number in perspective, 5 million is the population of Finland. And you can also think of it as 1 in 13 people you know in the UK have experienced gambling-related harms one way or another. The number of self-excluded players in the UK has also been on the rise, especially after the multiple lockdowns. GamStop reports that so far 250,000 people have self-excluded. At the same time, litigations against casino and sports betting operators are on the rise as well. Last year, close to 15 million euros worth of fines were issued to 33 operators globally. And this year, already 20 million pounds were issued only in the UK. And think about it, we're only at the beginning of March. We also found out that the most of the fines were due to safer gambling failings and AML failings. And I cannot stress this enough, that these statistics are not to point fingers at our colleagues in the industry. We are closely working with operators who work tirelessly to implement safer gambling and rigorous KYC processes. Seeing the effort by our fellow colleagues firsthand gives us the opportunity to see the pain points as well. And by looking at these figures and the pain points in the industry, we believe that there's some room for technical innovations that make all of this much easier. So to achieve our vision, we are very humbled to have partnered up with industry veterans, Crucial Compliance and W2, who are also with us today on the panel. Crucial Compliance offers a player protection tool which monitors players' behavioral change using markers of harm. W2 offers innovative affordability checks and KYC/KYB services. And at nChain, we offer blockchain technology to provide anonymity and the immutable ledger. Together, we are working towards the same goal, which is to make player protection effortless and to realize the single player view project. The first thing we can do for player protection is prevention. Using behavior monitoring system, you first identify the players at risk. Suppose you have a player who has been betting heavily for 2 hours consecutively during the night, which is very unusual for that player. This triggers a marker of harm, and you can think of the marker of harm as a red flag. When the markers of harm score, so this image here is a part of the Crucial player protection tool, and you can see the markers of harm score at a certain time for that specific player. And let's say that the green line is the acceptable threshold, and the yellow line means that the players are no longer getting the bonuses. and the orange line indicates that you need to intervene so that the player would not further develop problem gambling. So let's say that by playing 2 hours consecutively, heavily betting, maybe he's drinking, and you send an email to him and saying, hey, thank you so much for playing with us. We love that you're enjoying our new site. How about you set a session limit or deposit limit or any other settings that are effective? You can suggest them to do something that is going to help them to solve this situation. And these interactions between the operator and the player are then logged on chain to provide data integrity and immutability. What you also want to do for the effortless player protection is to incorporate automation wherever you can, to manage all the cases much easier and to avoid human errors. By automating some of the manual work, you are freeing up the team's resources to spend some more time on human-to-human interactions with players at risk. As we know also, as an industry, there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to affordability. Conventional affordability checks is to get slips, pay slips and bank statements from the players, and it's quite problematic because many players drop out of these processes. They just cannot be bothered with it, or it's a lot of manual work for the compliance team because the team has to decipher from all the bank statements and the other documents have not been standardized. Instead of relying only on the conventional method, there is now a middle ground, less intrusive check that can be implemented. Just by using name, address, and date of birth, disposable income can be measured by the details that have already been submitted online. I just have submitted online a loan application for my car or for a house, and this information is processed only by the authorized data platform provider, just like W2. And this information is used to check the real sense of disposable income without being intrusive, and then without risking the player to drop out from the process. And it's also much less manual work. So it can actually filter out the players who need to provide the additional proof, and you are directing resources to areas of concern. With W2, we are also optimizing conventional KYC processes by using tokenization. There are countless mergers and acquisitions happening all the time in the industry, and as a result, a large global gaming company often end up with 5 to 10 different databases that do not communicate. As a player, if I want to play on 7 different brands that are owned by the same company, I need to go through 7 redundant KYC. And this translates, again, more dropouts, unnecessary costs for the operator. Solutions for this is tokenizing a verification. Once you go through the initial KYC, a token can be issued. From the second KYC on, you only validate the token instead of the whole verification once again. This validation can be done with a fraction of a cost compared to the whole verification. Tokenization, together with a technology called translucent database, you can share the minimal information across the organization and maintain privacy. The combination of tokenization and privacy-enhancing technology will also be applied to single-player view. So, to summarize, The added value of blockchain is data integrity to the industry around player protection, accountability to drive good employee behavior, and ability to cut down a month worth of manual work into a click of a button. For example, data subject access request. And you can also think of it, or blockchain technology use case in iGaming, as an insurance policy for operators to use the immutable ledger as a tamper-proof evidence in case of an investigation. We just also looked at, with the last few slides, how tokenization and privacy enhancing nature of blockchain can help optimize KYC processes and single player view. So looking ahead towards our biggest project, single player view. It has been known as a unicorn project due to the lack of technologies to enable the collaboration inside the industry without jeopardizing the player privacy. With in-depth affordability, player behavior history, and anonymity powered by blockchain, we believe that for the first time, the industry has access to the technologies to realize the unicorn project. Last week, all of the panelists here attended a player protection forum in London. Throughout the conference, everyone was saying the C word, collaboration. To truly achieve safer gambling, collaboration and open communication across operators, sharing knowledge across different jurisdictions are very essential. So I will invite everyone who's joining us today or in the future to let us know your raw feedback and suggestions. We're also coming to ICE next month. So sponsoring the World Regulatory Briefing, Icebox, and the Consumer Protection Zone. So please make sure to come find us. Thank you so much for listening. I will now give my virtual mic back to our brilliant colleague, Becky. Thank you.
Amazing. That was an outstanding overview. Thank you so much. Tons of information in there. I hope you guys in the audience enjoyed that. And what we're going to do now is we've got about, just a little over 30 minutes to discuss some of the points that I made there. And I'm going to try not to repeat too much, but sometimes it's good to hear things explained, different ways by different people. It helps the point really hit home there. But I wanted to start off by going back to the single customer view idea that I was talking about there, because this is incredibly important and it's a unicorn project, like she said. So we know that it takes the 3 companies here to make this happen. So what I wanted to hear was from Warren and Paul, from their perspective, how this is going to come into fruition, how they're making this project happen, and what's going on behind the scenes with them. So Warren, I wanted to start with you. If you could talk to us about this single customer view and how this is happening over at W2.
Yeah, well, if I can think of something to say after I stole all my thunder, there's not much more to say. But yeah, I mean, this is something that's been talked about for a while in the iGaming space, but also across a lot of other verticals as well. You've got a lot of organisations have multiple touch points with their customers, be that a player, be that a purchaser, whatever it might be. And trying to understand that customer across a whole network can be really, really difficult, because they come in from different places. They might have even come into a different business that's subsequently been acquired, gone through different processes, whole data mapping issues. So it can become really, really complicated to understand. And then when you apply that to a safer gambling scenario, how can you then understand the customer and the risk that they potentially face across multiple parts of your business? So as I mentioned, there's often the case of multiple KYCs being done, or different rule sets being applied and different decisions being made against the same person. which just doesn't really make sense from a protection perspective, from a KYC perspective, from an AML perspective. You know, you want to treat the same person in the same way, regardless of where they are in your business. So what we're trying to do as a tri-party cohort is really simplify that process, so you can almost make it one point of entry or multiple points of entry that all behave in the same way. And then the logic and the decisions that are made can be applied across a business or across an industry or across a jurisdiction or across multiple combinations of the same, because I'm Warren Russell interacting with a betting operator or an e-commerce provider or a financial institution. It's a fine balancing act, because it does potentially lend itself to being a little bit big brothery, but you've got to understand your customer and how you can interact with them, both to maximize your returns from that investment that you've put into onboarding that customer, but also in protecting them. You know, allowing them to overspend on a gambling product or allowing them to overspend on an alcohol-based product or whatever it might be. You know, there is a definite shift across all of the sectors in that we operate to looking at how you can protect your customer with so many varied touch points.
Very good, Warren. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Paul, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, it's all about collaboration here. The only way we're going to get an effective single view of customer on a country-by-country level is collaboration between third-party providers, between the companies themselves, and also by the regulators defining what the data we should be sharing is. Because we can build the most effective single customer view, but if we're not all sharing the same data that has been logged the same way, and you know, we come back to markers of harm, which is one of the key aspects of actually sharing data. If we're all using different markers of harm and we're actually implementing them in different ways, then we will not have an effective single view of the customer. So what we need is the industry to come together to set the standards, for then third parties to work together to build the single view of customer, and then we can actually roll it out. And by using, you know, the blockchain, it gives us that single point of contact where we'll be able to store the anonymized data, which will then be able to be pulled through customer interfaces by each and individual company. So it is possible to do it. We are very close, but we're going to need a lot of collaboration, and that's why we're on calls like today.
Yeah, if you think about.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Warren.
The early methods of this were the credit reference agencies. So theoretically, the credit reference agencies are your single customer view of your financial risk. But when you try and put that in a market like the iGaming sector, you can't rely on one business. You've got to work together, and that's where all of the component parts are going to have a key part to play in this.
Very good. And as I said at the start, I've been in this industry a very long time, and this subject has been talked about a lot, and it's amazing to see that we finally do have a way to do this. So very exciting. Nick, I wanted you to elaborate a bit on the anonymous nature of the data that we're talking about, because this is obviously a very important piece, that as this data is stored on chain, it is anonymous. Can you talk, I described how this actually technically is possible, but can you talk to us about, you know, why this is important to the industry and how we can then use the data in different ways? Academia can use it. Why is it important?
Yeah, of course, Becky. But yeah, as I said, you know, we're using hash data, so it's totally anonymized. So for, you know, we've got to comply with GDPR. So when a marker of harm is triggered, the information is passed over to our product Kenze, and then it is hashed and then stored on chain. What is delivered back to the crucial compliance or W2 or the operator is a certificate stating that it has been hashed, and this is the timestamp of that particular interaction with that player at that time, or that document has been notarized at that particular time. So that's the time stamping and the notarization. So all this is totally anonymous to us, and you know, it can be then made available to anybody that wants or is given permissioned access to that public blockchain, to the public blockchain. So if academia wanted to access to find out the reports with regards to the markers of harm that are triggered here in the UK because they're writing a report for the NHS in the UK. Yeah, I don't know, I'm theoreticizing here. That they would have the ability to pull that information centrally from the chain, run it, but there wouldn't be any personalized data in there, because that's been because it's just hash data, but you've got the raw data to be able to analyze for healthcare, for providing services, for predicting is problem gambling on the rise, for modeling purposes. So it can be used in other sectors as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
That was perfect. That's exactly what I meant. And I can see that there are some questions coming through, which is fantastic. And the good news is we're going to cover some of the topics that these questions are asking about, but I did want to jump to regulation and what the regulators think of all of this, because we all know that the word blockchain, and especially when you start talking about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, sometimes these are dirty words, and a lot of gambling companies don't even want to touch it because of the reputation that's associated with it, or other things. But one for the group here to talk about what the regulators are thinking of this tech that you're presenting here to the audience today. What kind of conversations are you having with them? What do they think? Are they okay with it? And Nick, I'm gonna start with you on this, because I know you have quite a bit of experience with talking with regulators.
Well, yeah, I've spoken. Yeah, I know Paul's been speaking to a lot of regulators, and probably as Warren. But yeah, from a technology perspective, because this is such a new, it's not a new technology, but it is a new technology. Again, that I sort of pointed out in the presentation. We're at the sort of the curve there. I call it a marketing bell curve, but the adoption curve. We're at the beginning, and so it is quite a new technology. And you're right in what you said, Becky. You say blockchain, everyone goes, oh, cryptocurrencies, oh, it runs away and hides. But because we're using a progressive technology to protect and enhance the player's experience, the regulators are tending to sort of warm to it, because we are using it for protection. We're not actually getting involved in processing. We're not getting involved with the money, so to speak. Whereas crypto goes into the processing and the handling of digital cash, whatever it is, money in, money out. We're using the technology as a utility application. So the regulators, whilst there's the education process, are warming to the adoption of, as I say, a progressive technology to protect and enhance a player's experience.
Very good. And you mentioned Warren is talking a lot to regulators about this. Can you elaborate, Warren?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Nick was saying and I earlier, it's that confusion of what is blockchain and what is crypto, that water often gets muddied. And I often refer back to when the cloud was kind of like a new thing, and I was out talking to industries about services being in the cloud, and the conception was, well, that's the thing I connect to when I'm in Starbucks. How's my data safe on there? So it's definitely, looking at a couple of the questions, it's definitely an education piece, and almost about not leading with the phrase blockchain, because immediately sometimes walls go up, hackles go up on the back of the neck, and actually talking about the benefits, the speed, the immutability, the low cost, the ability to get large sums of data out and on quickly, and the regulators very rarely tell you how to do something. It's more what you've got to do. So by explaining the technology and how that solves the problem that the regulators want you to solve, I think that's where we're going to get them on side and teaching them that blockchain is not something to be scared of. It's just a new technology.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know one of the questions is actually saying, what are you guys as a group doing to communicate to the regulator, you know, that this solution is available, because the regulator wants the single customer view too, the Gambling Commission in particular. So I don't know whether Paul or I, if you, to answer our panelist, our audience question as to what are you actively doing to educate.
Yeah, I think we're doing a lot. The whole idea at the moment is education. So what we're doing is we're listening to the regulators talk about data integrity. We're listening to the regulators talk about the fact they want a single customer view. We're listening to the regulators talk about collaboration between operators. So what we're doing is putting that all together in a package and saying, look, this is one example of how it could all work together. And we take it to the regulator, and what we do is we lead with the products. So what we always lead with is the player protection products and the KYC verification tools and the affordability tools, because that is what is current. And we say, right, this is what we're doing. We are solving your problems with the tools that companies like Warren and ourselves have and have spent a lot of time and effort developing. And we show them those tools and say, these solve today's problems. The question is, how do we take it to the next level? And the next level is with blockchain. And at that stage, we then explain how we can take all the data that we have collected and how we can use the blockchain technology to actually create that irrefutable ledger where we can store the data anonymized, and that actually will become the portal for future sharing of data. And it's only then that most of the regulators get it and they go, okay, so you're not using it for crypto. And at that point, we always get a smile and go, no, exactly not. What we're using it for is compliance information. So what we're doing is using the blockchain to enhance player protection and store data related to compliance and regulatory requirements. And that is an interesting comment. And we've been, you know, across Gibraltar, Malta, the UK, Isle of Man, and a few others we've been talking to at the moment. So we've been very busy, but not just talking to gambling regulators, but talking to the regulators in other areas, such as Warren has been doing with the payment processing and the single view of customer. So we are out there, we are talking, and part of today is to educate people. So the answer is we're doing quite a lot to try and educate our regulators. They are very open to conversations at the moment, and that is very positive.
Excellent. Keep it up. I love it. I see here a question that I think is a really important one, and it's in regards to how technical we need to be in order to use these solutions you guys are talking about. So this particular question is for I here, and the question's about how, you know, how familiar do players need to be with tokenization and blockchain in order to use this type of product. So I wanted you to just go ahead and talk to us about how much we need to know.
Great. So as a player, you don't need to know anything. For using this token, if you can use, let's say, browser extension or QR code on your phone, that's the level of technology that you need to be familiar to use tokenization or any blockchain technologies. And in terms of the businesses who want to use blockchain as a utility application, we are building a product that's between blockchain and any legacy systems. So you don't need to have any developers that are familiar with blockchain technologies. That's what we do as blockchain company. So you don't have to worry about that.
I love it. And actually, literally, if I read my notes here, I had a question for Paul and Warren. It was similar. And it was, how much experience do you have with the blockchain? What is your technical level? And I guess you weren't shaking his head because I know what they're both going to say, but I just wanted the audience to realize that W2 crucial compliance, they're not, no offense guys, blockchain experts like, I and Nick might be. But anyhow, could Paul and Warren, will you just elaborate a little bit on the level of the technical level that is involved here to plug in with what Nick and I are working on?
Yeah, I mean,
yes. Warren,
Sorry,
go first, because
go ahead,
this
Warren.
is more in your area, so go ahead.
All I was going to say from my perspective, you know, if you take what the average 5-year-old knows about blockchain and then go backwards from there, that's kind of my level of knowledge. And it's something we've at W2 we've always, you know, been aware of, and something, you know, everybody's talking about blockchain, and you know, ourselves, we got that confusion between chain and crypto. You know, we work with crypto companies, you know, in just straight KYC processes, but it was always something that we were aware of, that, you know, putting identity on the chain or putting information on the chain, we don't know how to do it. You know, we don't have blockchain engineers, we don't have R&D teams to be able to do that. So that was when we started talking with Nick and I, and they said, well, we've got this middleware that can just, you can plug straight into and keep your tech the way your tech works, in that kind of old school, traditional, normal way of tech, and we'll do all the crazy magic stuff that puts it on the chain. And that's why it works from our perspective, because we're not a blockchain company, but we can be by partnering with the team at nChain.
Amazing. Paul, what do you have to add?
Yeah, just adding to that, we're in a similar situation. You know, we've developed the Crucial Player Protection System, which is a holistic single customer view over all player protection that's behavioral monitoring. So all of the behaviors and activities and interactions get logged within a database format, and that's our experience, that's our knowledge. We've got excellent people here building very good quality models, and the system itself is developing all the time. But when it comes to blockchain, that's a whole new area. So for us, it has been a learning curve, just like everyone else. And, you know, when we started talking about it, you know, it wouldn't have been possible to get to this stage without the Kensei system, because it's the Kensei system on the BSV blockchain that allows us to actually store that data, retrieve that data, and access the data. And that is the portal that you need if you want to do this. And also being very cost effective makes it possible. So, yep, we knew absolutely nothing about blockchain. We still know very little about blockchain, including myself. But what we do know is that we know a great team of people who are very knowledgeable and capable. And so through collaboration, we can make it work.
Very good. And you do mention it's affordable. And so, Nick, I wanted you to walk us through a few, I guess you could say, misconceptions. I don't know. I mean, not all blockchains are created equal here. As I mentioned in our presentation, Ethereum comes along with super high gas fees, and so do a lot of other chains out there. And I do see a question about the high energy output when it comes to mining, which is a great question, a little more advanced question, but a good one. So Nick, can you talk to us a little more about the fees and why Kensei is able to process all of this data without huge fees, and also maybe touch on the energy question as well, if
right, well, okay, the simple answer is we mine big blocks. Yeah, the BSV network is it mines the biggest blocks. Yeah, I think we've mined up to something like a 4 gig block, maybe even bigger now. I'm not keeping a track of it, but that enables us to put more information, more data, more transactions in those bigger blocks, which then also brings down the cost of the transactions quite considerably, so that we can get down to, you know, a cent. And if there's millions and millions of transactions, we can get down even lower than a cent per transaction for every transaction that hits the chain. And you know, we have the scalability built in there. Obviously, it's decentralized network. We have the scalability in there. So you've got security, the scalability, you've got the transaction capability, and then you address the green issue. Because we're putting more transactions in blocks, we are, you know, obviously we use renewable energies for our miners. So our miners are tapped into renewable energy sources. But more importantly, that because there's more transactions going into a block, the energy consumption is way lower. So yeah, I was actually privy to a report recently that showed BSV as the number one when it comes to energy consumption, or the reduction of energy consumption for the mining capabilities of the BSV network and maintaining the network. But yeah, we've got all those ducks in a line, and if anybody wants any more information, I can certainly show them the links that I was privy to, because
Yeah,
it's public information on the web.
I was about to say, whoever asked that question or anyone else that is interested in more information, please reach out to Nick or I, or I mean myself. Not actually I and the panel, but me. And there's quite a bit of information that I can send you on that too. There is another question about anonymization, but this one is in regards to we can anonymize the player data. What about the gambling operators? This is someone asking from the point of view of a revenue organization. So maybe Nick, I don't know if you want to try to tackle that one.
So I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you just
Right. So I guess in terms of the data that we're anonymizing,
right.
So it's the player data, but I guess which operator it's coming from, I don't know. Maybe we can skip that question for now.
So if you're looking on a jurisdictional layer, so say for example, you go and register at operator A, and you've filled in all your player details and you've triggered some markers of harm, and you may be in therapy or counselling, or there's some concerns with regards to your player behaviour, and you haven't self-excluded, but you've moved on to operator B or operator C, you've opened another account. With the single player view, with the anonymisation of this this data, your sort of playing history could follow you. You go through the registration process, you're then looked in, it's hi, it's Nick Hill, oh, you visited again, but so you've got your player history with you, and you may not have self-excluded, but you've exhibited potential gambling harms. You've triggered some markers of harm. It would then be, this information is passed on to operator B. They can make a valued judgment as to whether to let you into the casino or the sports book, or take the risk, or basically close the doors. I don't know, Paul, you might want to contribute here a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's when we start looking at this, the big issue here is how do we not put the information on the chain that is going to be able to benefit bad actors? Because that's what we're talking about. Whilst half the industry is doing their best and putting the information there for the purposes of good and player protection, building a single customer view, there is always the risk that a bad actor comes along and flips that on their head. So for instance, in the old days, we used to have people leaving companies with self-exclusion lists because you knew they were high value customers, and they would take that to the next, and that would become a VIP list. We've all seen that, unfortunately. Those days hopefully are long gone. So the whole idea of the single customer view is that it's going to be around regulatory player protection. It's around KYC, it's around AML, it's around affordability. So what we're going to be logging is that key data. What we're not going to do is a per transaction amount of data that on this date this person spent this amount of money and lost this amount of money. What we will do is put them into buckets of risk. So what we're saying is this person is in a high level risk bucket for expenditure in the last month. Okay, so when you log in as operator A, you will only be able to see what the total of what everybody else has done, but not a figure. It will be a risk bucket, and in that way we will not be tipping people off who may be bad actors that they can misuse the data. It will all be around player protection, and that's the key point here.
And to add to that, one thing to emphasize is that on chain, we don't store the source data. We only store the hash of the data, and there's no limitation on what kind of data you can log on chain. It can be private information, it can be numbers, it can be PDF, it can be anything, but all of that will be deleted so that it's compliant for GDPR, but the hash of the data will be stored on chain in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
And what's key there is that we're going to have to build a tool that takes it from the operators into the Kenzai system and pulls it out. So it's that single view of customer is actually a tool that the industry is looking at developing. In the UK, GamStop are looking at how to do it. We already have financial services company who are able to do it, but we're going to need something very specific in the gambling space. And again, when it comes to collaboration, there's quite a few people behind the scenes trying to make that work. So watch this space.
Very, very good. And actually, there was a point, Paul, I wanted you to also make about, this relates to how quick it is to pull this data. It's so fast. It takes, you know, a touch of a button instead of 28 days, I think you were saying. And how this can also be really valuable for the players themselves. Like, let's say a player knows he has or he or she has an issue but wants to know where they went wrong and they want the data. Can you talk to us about the powers of being able to pull something really quick and how that can help us in our search for responsible gambling initiatives?
Of course, one of the big problems we've got in this industry is not just when a regulator says, can you give us all the detail on this player? And again, we go to this, it can take up to 28 days to pull the data from all the different systems in the company, to analyze it, to understand it, to segregate it, to get it into a format that other people can understand and then send it across. One of the big benefits here is that we're going to be able to go into the system and pull an entire data stream off very quickly that is already sanitized because it is already been through the blockchain, it's already locked in data. And so what it will do is speed up the ability to get that single customer view of their transactions, what they've been doing, their markers of harm and how you've treated them, how you've interacted. So it will speed it up absolutely dramatically into seconds. And then you've just got to build out the report. And it also helps for the customer, because a lot of customers now, especially when they've felt that they've suffered from gambling related harm, they do a DSAR to the customer requesting all the data that company have on them to understand whether the company did knowingly ignore the fact that they were suffering from gambling related harm. And the whole idea of this is that they also will be able to get this a lot quicker, because if I'm suffering from gambling related harm and I think the company I'm playing with hasn't helped me, I want to know today, is that true or not? And part of the whole benefit of this package using the blockchain is we'll be able to quickly go in, we'll be able to pull the data, put it into a format and get it across to that individual. And furthermore, that individual will know that that report's got integrity. Because it's come from the chain. So speed is going to dramatically increase, you know, literally to minutes and hours rather than 28 days. And that is a huge benefit for somebody suffering from gambling related harm. And, you know, it just improves player protection across the industry from a regulator, a player and an operator.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you. And we're coming up to the top of the hour here, but real quickly, Warren, I wanted you just to give us a quick overview on how you and Paul over at Crucial Compliance are working on simplifying affordability checks, of course, also using nChain's tech for that. Can you just run us through that real quickly?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, affordability has been something that's been bubbling around for quite a while, and we all sit here with bated breath and wait to see what it will actually, you know, turn out to be. But I think the thing is, you know, the responsible and the good operators out there, of which most operators are actively trying to seek out ways in which they can understand the risks their customers face from affordability issues. And historically, what people, you know, what's happening is, you know, a certain trigger is hit, be it cumulative losses, whatever it might be, and that triggers the moment where the operator picks up the phone to the player and says, can you send me 3 months bank statements and 3 pay slips? And that's not a great experience for the player. And the difficulty for the operator is that they are, you know, they're not unique. You know, as a player, you have a plethora of operators that you can choose from. And if one's asking you for a load of bank statements and you can go to another one and you don't have to, you go where it's easier. So the way, you know, the way a lot of companies are dealing with it now, if they're not doing documents, is they're looking at open banking. But open banking is a complicated customer journey, can involve quite high drop-off rates again, because I think open banking, much like blockchain, is still very early. And you know, the understanding that the average person has about letting their operator have unfettered access to their bank account is not something a lot of people are comfortable with. So what we've been doing with Paul and more recently the team at nChain is looking at what's the maximum amount of information we can obtain without putting friction in the process. So what can we utilize on the information that is already obtained during the account opening process, so name, address and date of birth, and what is the maximum information that we can provide back, making it quick, making it easy, and allowing the operators to focus their resources more accurately.
Very good, very good. And guys, we're down to about 4 minutes or less here. So just to close out, I just wanted for you guys to maybe each leave the audience with one takeaway or one message before we finish the panel. I know I didn't ask you to do this beforehand, so this is just come up with something real quick. And Nick, I'm gonna start with you.
Let's start with me. I thought you would. So yeah, I've said this before, but you know, I've been involved in internet technology for a very long time, since it started way back in 95, 96. And blockchain to me is as exciting as when internet first started. And yeah, I've said this before, I see blockchain as the next iteration of internet. And within, you know, a very short period of time, whether it's 5 to 10 years, we will, as a society, be using blockchain technology to communicate, and it will be affecting parts of our lives, whereas like internet does now. So it's a technology that's here, it's here to stay, and yeah, and it's here to do good because it forces us to be accountable, auditable, and transparent. So that's my 2 penneth worth.
Paul, I'm going to jump down to you.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we look at player protection, we're looking at data, and it's about how do we collect that data, where do we store that data, and how do we then use that data, and how do we do it efficiently, effectively, and of course within the bounds of laws like GDPR. And what we have now is that we have huge amounts of data that have been used for the good of player protection. We understand the data a lot better, but the one thing that we've always been bad at is where do we hold that data? Especially when we look at the industry that's got huge consolidation. What's happening is data integrity is being lost from transaction to transaction to transaction. So, you know, going forward, we need a better way to store that data. And, you know, when you add blockchain into it, all of a sudden you've got great data, which is being analyzed well, and it's being stored well, and that we know how to use. So it is the next iteration of the world that we need to live in.
Excellent. Warren, 30 seconds. Or less.
Than that, I think the main thing from my perspective is keep that distinction. Chain does not equal crypto. You know, if there's one thing you take away from this session, it's not we're trying to get you to use Bitcoin to do your compliance. It's using chain, and that's the main thing.
Very good. And I?
So N-Chain, Crucial Compliance W2, we're all going to be at probably all the conferences this year. And so if you see us, please grab us. We really like to sit down and have face-to-face conversations with all of you to get raw feedback and see a way to collaborate.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, IGB, and thanks you guys so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. What happens now?
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much to our amazing panel today. You know, to N-Chain for sponsoring, and you know, Nick and I for participating, and also to Paul, Becky, and Warren. I'd also like to thank Audrey Benchio from N-Chain in the background for helping coordinate a lot of this, and of course Erin Manel from Clarion's Ops team for doing all the technical heavy lifting. And that, dear listeners, is everything from us today. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be back on Wednesday, 16th March, with Staking a Claim to Betting, the transition from online casino to sports, in partnership with Champion Sports. So we hope you can join us. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.